Orion smiled mysteriously, nodding his head. You're right. After the fight, I got what we both were fighting for, a great inheritance, left behind by a godlike being. Both girls gasped simultaneously, eyes widening even further with astonishment and excitement. A godlike inheritance? Rena echoed softly, awe coloring her gentle voice. Truly? Orion nodded gently, watching their expressions shift between shock and admiration. Yes. It was a surprise even to me. Fiora smiled brightly, leaning closer, eyes sparkling with pride. If anyone can handle such an inheritance, then it's you, young master. Rena nodded fervently, her gaze warm and unwavering. Indeed. There's no one more deserving. Orion laughed softly, touched by their unwavering confidence. I'm glad you both have so much faith in me. Their conversation continued for a little while longer, filled with warmth and laughter as Orion recounted small details of his adventures, carefully omitting only the most sensitive secrets. Eventually, Orion glanced toward the window, realizing the night was growing later. He sighed lightly, stretching slightly. As much as I've enjoyed our chat, I really should go visit Seraph before it gets too late. Rena immediately smiled warmly, rising from her seat gracefully. Oh, of course. Seraph has missed you terribly as well. She's been spending most of her time quietly in her room as usual, waiting anxiously for news of your return. Orion raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the revelation. Is she in her room? Fiora giggled softly, pointing gently toward a door along the hallway outside. Yes, she's in her room. Orion smiled as he slowly stood up. That's perfect, then. I'll go visit her now. Both girls stood as well, each giving him a gentle hug once more. Rena smiled tenderly, eyes glowing softly in the lamplight. Good night, young master. We're truly glad you're home. Fiora added warmly, indeed. Rest well after you visit Seraph. You've earned it. Orion nodded affectionately to both of them. Thank you. Both of you should rest soon, too. Hee, I feel like the time to eat the two of them is coming closer, master. / omega / And you dare call me a pervert? He inwardly shook his head and stepped out of the room. He walked a short distance in the hallway, his footsteps gentle against the polished wooden floor. His thoughts wandered briefly, replaying the conversations he had with his grandparents and the warmth of his reunion with Rena and Fiora. He paused before Seraph's door. A faint, warm lamplight seeped through the crack beneath the door, signaling she was still awake. Inside the softly lit room, Seraph sat quietly on her bed, her delicate features illuminated gently by moonlight filtering through the window pane. Her gaze was distant, reflecting her inward contemplation. Her pale fingers nervously intertwined, lost in thought, her green hair cascading gently down her shoulders. Suddenly, her ears twitched slightly as familiar, steady footsteps echoed softly from the corridor outside. Her eyes widened slightly, a glimmer of hope flickering in her expression. She quickly stood from her bed, her heartbeat accelerating with anticipation. Just as she reached the door, she heard the gentle knocking, soft and unquestionably familiar. With trembling fingers, Seraph gently opened the door, revealing Orion standing outside. He was leaning casually, his face bathed in the hallway's soft lamplight. A warm, affectionate smile stretched across his lips, his eyes shimmering with gentle amusement. Good evening, Orion greeted softly, his voice infused with playfulness. How are you doing today on this fine evening? Seraph's eyes softened at his small jest, the corners of her lips twitching upward into a very faint yet genuine smile. Her usually expressionless face brightened subtly, warmth and relief evident in her gaze as she slowly stepped aside, inviting him inside. Her voice emerged softly, hesitant yet endearing in its broken rhythm, I feel scared without you. Orion's gaze softened as he stepped inside gently, quietly closing the door behind him. He looked at her kindly, noting with quiet satisfaction how her eyes held less anxiety than before. They walked side by side toward the table beside the window, settling themselves comfortably in the chairs. The soft glow of the moon painted the room in gentle silver. Taking a deep, calming breath, Orion began sharing his recent experiences in a manner reminiscent of their past conversations. Seraph listened intently, her violet eyes wide with curiosity and genuine interest, her delicate head occasionally nodding gently as she took in each word. Orion described the adventure thoroughly, recounting his separation from the others, his fierce battle with Valerian, and the unique challenges he'd faced, as well as the peculiar time dilation he'd experienced in the small world. Throughout the recounting, Seraph remained silent, occasionally murmuring gentle, broken phrases to express surprise, admiration, or relief at critical moments. Her reactions, though subtle, conveyed clearly how invested she was in his narrative. When Orion finally paused, letting the comfortable silence settle briefly between them, he turned his gentle gaze toward Seraph. He tilted his head slightly, his voice softening with concern and care. "Enough about me," he said quietly, a faint, tender smile on his lips. "Tell me, Seraph, how have you been feeling lately? How's your health?" Seraph's gaze lowered softly, her hands gently clasping together on the tabletop. Her green hair shifted softly as she tilted her head thoughtfully. After a short pause, she gathered her thoughts and spoke quietly, her voice shuddering. "Better than before," she murmured softly, raising her gaze to meet Orion's compassionate eyes. "Lady Celine, and Rena. Fiora, always, taking care of me, kindly." Orion nodded slowly, understanding and warmth filling his expression. "I'm glad to hear they're helping you. You're part of the family, after all," he reassured gently. Seraph's eyes shimmered slightly, her expression momentarily overwhelmed by emotion. Her soft voice carried gratitude, vulnerability, and a newfound strength as she replied, "I'm grateful. Orion, truly." Orion reached out slowly, gently placing his hand atop hers. His voice was tender and reassuring as he looked into her eyes. "You've done incredibly well, Seraph. Even your speech, it's improved significantly. You should be proud, and don't push yourself needlessly." She smiled a little at his praise. Still, long way to go. But I will try my best. I also want to tell you about my past. But later." He smiled encouragingly. "Take your time. I don't think we can do much about it even if I learned about your background." She nodded her head as a soft silence enveloped them once more, comfortable and reassuring. Orion allowed the silence to linger briefly, savoring the peaceful silence of the moonlit room. The gentle illumination washed softly over Seraph's delicate features, highlighting the calm determination in her usually dead eyes. After a moment, Orion gently squeezed her hand one more time before slowly withdrawing his touch. His voice emerged gently, carrying an affectionate yet firm tone. "I'm glad we got to speak again, Seraph. And I'm happy to see that you're doing much better. Remember, take your time recovering and don't rush yourself. There's no hurry, we'll be here every step of the way." Seraph's violet eyes glowed softly in response, her gratitude evident even without words. Her voice, though still soft and broken, was more confident after getting to talk with him after a few days. "Yes. I understand, thank you, Orion, for always being kind to me." Orion smiled softly, his gaze gentle as he stood up slowly, stretching his limbs a little. "It's late already," he murmured gently, glancing at the window where the stars shone vividly against the velvet sky. "You should get some rest now. You need it." Seraph obediently nodded, a faint smile curving her lips as she rose gracefully from her chair. She walked Orion toward the door, her movements more relaxed and comfortable than he remembered. At the threshold, Orion turned to face her one last time, his expression tender and protective. "Sleep well, Seraph. And don't hesitate to come to me if anything troubles you," he gently reminded her. She met his gaze, offering another faint yet heartfelt smile. "I will. Good night." Orion stepped out into the hallway, softly closing the door behind him. For a moment, he stood there quietly, a feeling of relief settling over him before he walked towards his room at the side. Once inside, Orion sighed deeply, the familiar surroundings instantly relaxing him. He slipped off his outer robes and eased himself onto the soft bed, stretching out comfortably. The bed felt exceptionally comfortable after having to sit in the wilds for so long. As he lay in quiet contemplation, the gentle voice of Lumi emerged softly within his sea of consciousness, her tone cheerful and curious. "Master, quite an eventful day, wasn't it?" Orion chuckled lightly, nodding his head slightly. "Indeed, it's been eventful enough to fill an entire month. Who would have imagined things would turn out this way?" Lumi giggled softly. "Not me. And yet, you seem to always exceed everyone's expectations. Facing off against the bloodsuckers, obtaining an inheritance from someone like Sun Wukong, and even restoring an entire small world. Honestly, Master, your fate is too absurd." Orion laughed out loud at her teasing, rolling his eyes slightly as he relaxed further into the mattress. "Looks like the mark of fate is playing its part all right. Fucking me over wherever I go. It's a good thing I'm quick-witted and managed to get out of the situation." Lumi's voice softened, her tone becoming more contemplative. "And yet you remained humble in front of others. You should really learn to boast a little." He chuckled and shook his head. "Pride and arrogance only lead to downfall. And I'm not being humble, I brag from time to time as well. I just don't want to overwhelm others. That's why I didn't tell others how much I broke through. Though I need to tell my grandparents about my healed foundation as well as my breakthroughs. Ah yes, they would needlessly worry about you otherwise." He exhaled a long breath and nodded. "Precisely. And I also need to explore what Wukong's legacy is before I can tell them exactly about it. But oh well, I'm sure it will be quite interesting." A thoughtful silence settled between them briefly before Lumi's voice chimed again, turning playful and teasing. "Oh right, Master. We still have 3 ascended Gacha draws left to do, don't we? Perhaps we should see if your luck holds up as strongly as it did last time?" Orion's eyes lit up slightly, interest piqued at the mention of the draws. He placed one hand beneath his head, gazing thoughtfully toward the ceiling. I almost forgot about those. I suppose we should give it a try soon. After all, the last draw provided us with a treasure that got us home safely. Who knows what else awaits?" "Exactly." Lumi chimed enthusiastically, her excitement infectious. "Perhaps we'll receive something that will make you even stronger, or maybe a beautiful waifu. Given your recent achievements, I wouldn't doubt it." Orion's lips twitched as he heard what Lumi tried to sneak into her words. "You will really never change. Anyways, let's do them now. I don't think I will be able to sleep properly without first doing the draws." Lumi giggled excitedly in Orion's sea of consciousness, her playful voice brimming with anticipation. "All right, Master. Let's not delay it any further." Initiating ascended Gacha draw sequence. Orion continued lying down comfortably in his bed, a small smile curving his lips as the familiar, dramatic Gacha theme music began playing inside his mind. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the whimsical melody and the humorous sense of ceremony Lumi always added to these draws. The space before him shimmered softly as the system's translucent interface slowly appeared, materializing in glittering motes of blue and gold light. His heart raced slightly, anticipation swirling in his chest, eyes shining as he waited to see the treasures awaiting him. And here we go. First ascended draw, let's see how absurd your fate is this time, Master. Lumi said enthusiastically, giggling in amusement. The familiar, spinning Gacha wheel appeared, glowing vibrantly as it rapidly cycled through numerous unknown items. A few seconds later, it slowed down until, with a satisfying chime, the image finally locked onto an intricately designed, radiant mirror. Orion immediately leaned forward, intrigued, his eyes narrowing with curiosity as the item's description appeared clearly on the system screen. Illusion-shattering mirror. Grade, Epic. Type, Soul-linked artifact. Effect. Grants the user the ability to see through all forms of illusion, mirage, spiritual deception, or mental interference, including spatial camouflage and projection-based hiding techniques. Its detection power is limited to 2 major realms above the user. can be used twice a week. Orion's eyes widened slightly, his expression turning serious as he considered the mirror's potential. This is extremely valuable, he murmured quietly, genuinely impressed. An artifact capable of seeing through illusions, even from those stronger than me? Indeed. Lumi responded cheerfully. Just imagine the possibilities, Master. Hidden enemies, camouflaged ambushes, illusory traps, and especially those demons, they'd all become utterly useless against you. Orion nodded slowly, a thoughtful smile emerging on his face. This should be useful during the second academy test. It'll also be exceptionally useful in uncovering hidden treasures and opportunities. We should definitely test this tomorrow. Agreed. Now, ready for the second draw? Lumi asked eagerly. Orion chuckled and nodded, relaxing back onto his pillow. Absolutely. Let's see what else fate has in store for us. Again, the wheel appeared, spinning energetically. Orion watched closely, his heartbeat quickening with anticipation. When the wheel finally slowed, it settled upon a brilliant, fiery ember pulsating with runic energy. Orion's breath caught slightly, his heart surging with excitement even before the details appeared. Runic Heartforge Ember. Grade, Legendary. Type, Elemental Core Material, Soul-Body Hybrid. Effect. Allows the user to forcefully fuse two elemental spells into a single, high-output spell. Increases raw spell power exponentially based on element compatibility. Unlimited usage, but each use strains the user's physical body, meridians, and sea of consciousness heavily. Fusion complexity scales with affinity control and body strength. Orion sat upright, his eyes wide with disbelief and excitement as he read the description carefully, twice over. His voice was breathless with excitement as he spoke aloud. Elemental fusion? This is the shit I've been chasing with my dual wielding. This is crazy. Lumi giggled triumphantly, sharing his enthusiasm. Right? Master, just imagine combining your fire and thunder affinities, or even your fire and wood affinities. The destructive potential of your spells will skyrocket. Orion's pulse quickened, his mind already visualizing countless possibilities. He could barely contain his excitement. The strain on the body sounds serious, though. But considering my enhanced physique, it should be manageable with practice. This will become one of my strongest hidden cards. Exactly. Though you should still be careful, Master. The description explicitly states the strain increases with elemental complexity. He nodded seriously. Indeed, caution will be essential. I probably can't use advanced element fusion with my current physique. But core elemental fusion should be doable. Now things like this are what I crave. Orion leaned back again, releasing a satisfied sigh as he calmed his racing thoughts. The room was quiet except for his breathing. After a few moments, Orion glanced back at the shimmering system screen floating in front of him, smiling in appreciation. 2 treasures down, 1 to go. I wonder if the third one will also be something extraordinary. Lumi laughed playfully. With your absurd fate? I have no doubt, Master. Shall we proceed with the final draw now? Orion chuckled softly, nodding in affirmation. Of course. Let's finish this properly. The spinning wheel appeared once more, cycling rapidly through mysterious treasures, each potential outcome making Orion's pulse quicken further. His gaze locked intently on the wheel, eagerly awaiting the final treasure's reveal. Lumi, within his sea of consciousness, hummed playfully, her voice buzzing with excitement. Here it comes, Master. Fingers crossed for something amazing. With an almost teasing slowness, the wheel finally ticked to a halt. Orion stared intently as the image gradually resolved. However, instead of revealing another awe-inspiring artifact or powerful treasure, the screen flashed a bright, cheerful message in mocking gold letters. Better luck next time. Orion's expression froze in place, his previously enthusiastic eyes now staring blankly at the vibrant, glittering words on the screen. A deafening silence filled the room for several long moments as Orion's mind struggled to register the unexpected outcome. His brows furrowed, disbelief clearly etched into his features, his voice emerging as an incredulous whisper, "What the fuck? These can be empty as well?" Lumi's playful excitement instantly deflated, her voice now hesitant and slightly nervous. Well, you see, Master, even if they're ascended gacha draws, they're still gacha draws in the end. Sometimes luck just runs out. Orion exhaled deeply, calming his momentary frustration as he rubbed his temples gently. Right, of course. Luck is never guaranteed. Still, I definitely wasn't expecting an empty draw, especially after those two incredible treasures, he murmured softly, more to himself than to Lumi. Lumi, sensing Orion's disappointment, quickly shifted her tone, attempting to cheer him up. Exactly, Master. You still got two absolutely amazing treasures, the illusion-shattering mirror and the runic heartforge ember. Those alone are worth more than enough to make up for one empty draw, right? Cheer up. Orion let out a soft chuckle, his brief annoyance fading away as Lumi's optimism improved his mood. You're right, Lumi. It matters not, he repeated softly, shaking his head gently with a resigned smile. I was probably getting a little greedy after those first two treasures. I should be satisfied. Exactly. There's always next time to look forward to as well. Hee hee. Lumi chimed brightly, sensing the return of his good spirits. He exhaled once more, feeling fatigue finally catching up to him as the weight of the day settled heavily on his shoulders. With a tired sigh, Orion slowly rolled over onto his side, sinking deeper into the soft, comforting embrace of his bed. His voice emerged softly, tinged with weariness. All right, enough excitement for tonight. It's late, and I have a long day ahead of me tomorrow. Good night, Lumi. Lumi's voice softened warmly, affectionate and gentle as she responded quietly. Good night, Master. Sweet dreams. The soft glow of the room slowly dimmed, the shimmering interface of the system fading into nothingness. Orion lay still, eyes gradually closing as sleep gently embraced him, his breathing becoming steady and calm. The chamber fell into silence, the tranquil night settling peacefully over the Hellstorm estate, bringing an end to yet another unforgettable day in Orion's extraordinary life. The next morning came gently, golden rays of sunlight filtering softly through Orion's window, illuminating the familiar contours of his room. A faint knock at his door stirred him from his peaceful slumber. Moments later, the gentle voice of Rena called from the other side, accompanied by Fiora's softer, shyer tone, urging him to rise. Orion smiled lightly to himself, feeling the tranquility of a night well rested. Stretching comfortably, he responded with a brief acknowledgement, allowing the two of them to enter. With their usual playful greetings and cheerful smiles, Rena and Fiora accompanied him as he headed to the bath. The bath was refreshing, comfortably warm and invigorating. After a relaxing soak, he dressed himself in casual attire. Once prepared, he proceeded toward the dining hall, walking leisurely through the estate's quiet hallways. As he entered the dining hall, he saw a familiar sight, a long, rectangular table being meticulously arranged by several maids, filling the room with pleasant aromas of fresh bread, sweet fruits, and steaming tea. At the head of the table sat Eldrick, comfortably sipping his morning tea with a calm expression. Celine sat gracefully at the side, smiling warmly as her gaze fell upon Orion. Hearing Orion enter, Eldrick turned his head, a warm smile spreading across his old face. Morning, lad, he greeted affectionately. How was your rest? Orion returned the smile. I finally had great sleep in weeks, he replied, approaching the table. Celine's gentle voice followed next, softly patting the seat beside her. Good morning, dear. Come sit here. Orion nodded and took his seat beside her, breathing in the warm sense of breakfast as he settled comfortably. Idle chatter quickly filled the air as the three enjoyed their morning meal together. They discussed simple things, savoring the peacefulness of the morning. Eldrick occasionally laughed heartily at Orion's casual remarks, while Celine provided her own commentary, fostering a relaxed and cheerful atmosphere. When they had finished breakfast, the maids silently removed the plates, leaving behind a neatly cleared table. Orion's relaxed expression gradually became more serious, drawing the attention of Eldrick and Celine, who both sensed the shift in his mood. They exchanged curious glances before focusing intently on their grandson. Taking a steadying breath, Orion began speaking, his voice calm yet firm. I wanted to tell you a few more things regarding my journey to the lower world. Both Eldrick and Celine leaned forward slightly, their expressions attentive and curious. Orion carefully continued, actually, during my rebirth here, I had acquired a world tree seed. And during my time in the lower world, after a series of events, the world tree seed was fused with my sea of consciousness and evolved into a world tree sapling. Eldrick's eyes widened slightly in astonishment, while Celine covered her mouth gently, understanding the implications of such an event. Before either could speak, Orion proceeded, his voice steady, because of this integration, all the previous injuries within my sea of consciousness, my soul, and even my damaged foundation have been completely healed. A moment of stunned silence followed his revelation. Celine's eyes softened in relief and joy, her gaze gentle as she reached out to touch Orion's hand reassuringly. Eldrick, however, kept his stunned expression as he spoke in a shocked voice, What? Your sea of consciousness got merged with a world tree seed? And it evolved into a world tree sapling? Orion helplessly smiled and nodded his head. Yes, that's what happened. Eldrick looked at him seriously. Do you know how big of an event this is? There is a branch of the world tree in the depths of the great elven forest. And a single branch has been able to provide shelter for trillions of elves throughout that massive forest. And you have the entire world tree sapling in your sea of consciousness. Celine smiled and shook her head. Why are you so surprised now? You need to learn to get used to him lest you die of a heart attack. Orion quickly agreed with Celine. Exactly, Grandpa. If you were shocked by such small things, then how would you react if I did something even more crazy? Eldrick's lips twitched as he wanted to beat up Orion for the first time. He looked at him and said, Do you want to bury these old bones yourself? Orion coughed lightly and continued, Anyways, due to this event, my mana cultivation and soul cultivation both advanced significantly. I've reached the 6th level in both realms. This was one of the main reasons why I was able to face off that bloodsucker Valerian. Eldrick looked at him for a second with a deadpan expression before leaning back in his chair and closing his eyes to rest. Hia. He exhaled a long breath. Celine and Orion looked at each other with playful smiles. Celine softly said, All right. If you don't have anything more to tell us, then you should go and rest. Who knows when you'll go out for another adventure? Orion quickly nodded his head before getting up from his seat and walking out of the dining hall. Eldrick opened his eyes slowly, watching Orion's figure disappear through the dining hall doorway. A complicated expression settled on his weathered features, half amused, half troubled, as he sighed deeply, shaking his head. This lad will surely kill me from shock one of these days, he murmured softly, only half jokingly. Beside him, Celine placed a hand over her lips, stifling a gentle giggle. Her eyes twinkled warmly as she observed her husband's frustrated but affectionate reaction. Then you should learn to be more tolerant, she teased gently. After all, he already trusts us enough to share all these incredible secrets. As his grandparents, we must do our absolute best for him. Eldrick turned slowly to face his wife, his serious expression relaxing into a faint, resigned smile. The depth of concern in his eyes, however, lingered. He nodded solemnly after a moment's pause. Indeed. And with all that's happening, we must also make our own preparations, he said quietly, his tone becoming heavier with every word. The tension at the borders has been escalating rapidly. From what I've heard, the top empires are beginning to strategize and align themselves with other races to address the growing threat from the demons. Celine's brows knitted together in worry. She released a heavy sigh, filled with exasperation and concern. You know exactly how those upper echelons operate. They'll drag their feet and delay any meaningful action until the threat is right at their doorstep, she muttered bitterly, her voice tinged with frustration. Always more interested in protecting their own profits and influence than safeguarding their people. Eldrick's eyes flashed briefly with mysterious amusement, a knowing smile appearing on his face. "Don't worry," he reassured her gently, voice firm with certainty. "This time, they don't have the luxury of dragging their feet any longer." Celine tilted her head slightly, curiosity immediately evident in her gaze. She turned fully toward Eldrick, intrigued by his confident words. "Oh? What makes you say that? Have those selfish fools finally grown some courage under the demon threat?" Eldrick chuckled heartily, shaking his head in immediate denial. "Haha, that would be impossible. Those greedy old bastards never change unless forced," he replied, humor tinging his voice before turning serious once more. Leaning slightly forward, his voice lowered conspiratorially, eyes shining brightly with respect. "No, the real reason they're forced to act quickly this time is because Sir Dawn has intervened." Celine's eyes widened in genuine surprise upon hearing the name, her curiosity piqued further. Sir Dawn himself stepped forward, she whispered in disbelief, clearly impressed. "Truly? He usually stays out of such mundane affairs." Eldrick nodded deeply, his gaze thoughtful yet respectful. "Indeed. Sir Dawn personally addressed all the top powers, demanding they quickly find a unified solution to the demon threat and explicitly warning them against creating any internal conflict or delaying unnecessarily during these critical times." A soft smile spread across Celine's graceful face, clearly relieved. "If Sir Dawn has spoken, even those arrogant nobles and stubborn old fools have no choice but to comply swiftly," she said softly, a hint of satisfaction evident in her voice. "That's reassuring news." Eldrick exhaled a breath of relief as well, his shoulders relaxing slightly for the first time that morning. Yes, all the human empires immediately heeded his call. Additionally, other races have their own top-tier powerhouses stepping forward to match his stance. "We can expect a unified response sooner rather than later." Celine nodded approvingly, her previous frustration slowly fading. Her voice softened gently, filled with both admiration and hope. "At least there is someone capable enough to put those selfish nobles in line. Sir Dawn's authority truly is indispensable in times like these." The two of them continued chatting quietly, their conversation shifting towards smaller, everyday matters as the atmosphere gradually relaxed once more. Meanwhile, Orion had returned to his room. He quietly closed the door behind him, exhaling slowly as he felt the peaceful silence of his room envelop him. He stretched slightly, then walked toward his large window overlooking the serene gardens of the Hellstorm estate. Warm sunlight spilled through the glass, casting a gentle glow over the neatly trimmed shrubs and vibrant flower beds below. Orion leaned against the window ledge, eyes narrowing thoughtfully as he considered the day ahead. Inside his sea of consciousness, Lumi's voice rose softly, filled with curiosity and cheerfulness. "You seem deep in thought, Master. What are you planning on doing?" Orion chuckled quietly to himself. "I think it's about time I form a contract with a familiar." Lumi's voice immediately brightened with excitement, echoing clearly within his sea of consciousness. "Are you finally going to form a contract with that? Degree. Orion laughed softly and nodded. "Yes. I've already learned most of the basics of spirit arts during my evolution process when I was stuck in my sea of consciousness. All that's left is the actual formation of the contract." Lumi enthusiastically agreed, her voice bubbling with anticipation. "Ah, I can't wait to see it. Hurry, Master, hurry." Shaking his head with a smile at her excitement, Orion took out the Silent Hall cube from his inventory, placing it carefully in the center of his room. He inserted a lot of mana crystals, activating the device. Immediately, the cube hummed softly as a gentle barrier enveloped the room, isolating it completely from the outside world. Satisfied, Orion carefully reached into his inventory once again, retrieving an unusual stone statue. Despite its intricate craftsmanship, the statue was undeniably peculiar. It depicted a salmon frozen mid-flight, its mouth slightly open as if caught mid-insult. Lumi giggled lightly, her curiosity evident. "The sassy salmon familiar, huh? The one that insults your enemies mid-battle. Ahaha, Master, your taste really is unique." Asterisk. Orion grinned helplessly, placing the salmon statue gently on the floor in front of him. Sometimes, sass is a more potent weapon than a sword. Taking a deep breath, Orion calmly extended his hand, tracing intricate lines of glowing mana in the air. His fingers moved fluidly, guided effortlessly by the teachings he had studied diligently within his sea of consciousness during his evolution. The mana coalesced gracefully into a complex yet elegant circle that shimmered brilliantly above the stone salmon. With a final gesture, Orion directed the mana circle downward, carefully imprinting it onto the stone statue. For a moment, nothing happened. Silence settled heavily in the room, only to be broken when the statue began emitting a soft, radiant glow. The light gradually intensified until, in a burst of brilliance, the statue vanished entirely from view. Immediately, Orion felt a distinct shift within his sea of consciousness. A new, separate pocket space had appeared, small but stable, housing the now dormant sassy salmon familiar comfortably within it. Orion mentally inspected the creature with curiosity, noting its peaceful slumber. It looks like your familiar is still dormant for now. How interesting. I wonder how it will behave once it awakens. Lumi remarked thoughtfully, clearly intrigued. Orion chuckled lightly. With a personality described as endless sass, I can only imagine. After observing the salmon briefly, Orion decided it was best to test it out as soon as possible. He stood up, retrieving the silent hall cube and placing it back into his spatial inventory. Lumi gently prompted, her curiosity still bubbling. Are you going to look at your other treasures now, Master? You still have so many interesting things yet to explore. Orion shook his head with a playful smile, already walking toward the door. No, this is far too intriguing not to check out immediately. Hee, you really can't resist trying out new toys, can you, Master? Degree. Lumi teased, laughing merrily as she agreed with his decision. Chapter 361, Sparring Match. Exiting the room, Orion walked down the hallway before he approached the guards stationed outside. He nodded, inquiring casually, "Do you know where Uncle Edgar and Brother Lucan are right now?" The guard straightened respectfully, replying promptly, "Sir Edgar and Sir Lucan are currently overseeing training exercises at the training grounds behind the mansion, young master." Orion nodded, offering a quick word of thanks before proceeding swiftly to the training grounds. The spacious training area was bustling with activity, filled with the rhythmic sounds of weapons clashing, feet shifting, and occasional shouted instructions. At the center stood Edgar and Lucan, both closely watching a group of guards practicing their sword techniques. Seeing Orion approaching, Edgar's expression immediately warmed with a smile. Lucan, as always, tried to make a cool pose as if he was some hidden master. "Young Master Orion," Edgar greeted warmly, motioning the guards to pause their training. "Good to see you up and about." Lucan also smiled and greeted him, "You are finally here, young master. And here I was wondering when you'd show up." Orion smiled lightly, greeting them both, "Good morning, Uncle Edgar, Grandpa Lucan." Lucan's lips twitched at the way Orion addressed him. Edgar gently chuckled before he turned toward the guards, "You're dismissed for now. Continue your practice later." The guards bowed respectfully and dispersed, leaving the three of them alone on the training grounds. Orion chatted casually with Edgar and Lucan for a few moments, discussing mundane topics briefly. However, soon his gaze shifted toward Lucan, eyes glinting playfully as he asked, "Brother Lucan, how about sparring with me for a bit?" Lucan raised an eyebrow in mild surprise, tilting his head curiously. "Only me, young master? Not Sir Edgar as well?" Orion shook his head firmly, his eyes gleaming with excitement and anticipation. "No, I specifically want to test something new against you today." Lucan's interest was visibly piqued. Without another word, he smoothly drew his sword, stepping into the training ring with quiet confidence. "Very well, young master. It'll be my honor." Orion followed suit immediately, smoothly unsheathing both of his swords as he entered the ring opposite Lucan. A confident smile curved his lips, excitement dancing in his eyes as he readied himself. Edgar folded his arms, smiling approvingly from the side. "Well then, this should be interesting. Don't go too easy on him, Lucan." Lucan chuckled softly, steadying his stance. Of course not, Sir Edgar. The young master wouldn't appreciate it if I did. Orion laughed lightly, his body radiating anticipation and eagerness. Indeed. Brother Lucan, let's see how much you can handle. Lucan raised an eyebrow, shouldn't it be the other way around? Flexing his sword, Orion's lips curled into a smile, you'll soon see. Orion shifted into a balanced stance, gripping both of his swords loosely but firmly. Lucan stood opposite, a composed look on his face as he held his sword in front, its blade glinting in the morning sun. Ready, Brother Lucan? Orion asked playfully, his eyes twinkling with hidden excitement. Lucan smirked, nodding slightly. Always ready, young master. Let's see what new tricks you've learned. Without further hesitation, Orion moved first. His swords flashed forward with practiced ease, a seamless combination of speed and control. Lucan responded fluidly, matching Orion's strikes blow for blow. Their swords clashed, ringing sharply through the air, drawing Edgar's approving nod from the sidelines. However, as their spar continued, Lucan's expression subtly shifted. At first, he maintained a relaxed confidence, blocking each of Orion's strikes comfortably, but as the rhythm accelerated, Lucan began noticing subtle changes. Orion's swordsmanship had significantly improved. Each strike was crisp, purposeful, and precise. His movement was more fluid and elegant, his footwork perfectly synchronized with every attack. Lucan found himself genuinely pressed, his eyes widening in admiration. With a spin, Orion deflected Lucan's sword, smoothly transitioning into another series of attacks. Lucan, forced to retreat a step, praised with genuine astonishment, "You've improved drastically, young master. Just how much did you experience in that small world to improve this much?" Orion laughed softly, maintaining his offensive without missing a beat. "I had to improve to face off those bastards." Edgar chuckled from the sidelines, clearly enjoying the match, impressed by Orion's rapid growth. Lucan smiled in response, adjusting his stance as he intensified his defense. "Then, I won't underestimate you further." The spar escalated rapidly, both participants deeply immersed in their clash. However, Orion's eyes suddenly sparkled mischievously. Seeing an opening, he leaped back, briefly breaking the engagement. Lucan paused in confusion, tilting his head curiously. "Is something wrong, young master?" "Nothing," Orion smirked lightly, infusing mana into the newly formed pocket space within his sea of consciousness. He mentally summoned the sassy salmon familiar, feeling the connection activate instantly. Suddenly, a small flash of bright pink light appeared just above Orion's shoulder, revealing a floating salmon, its bright scales shimmering absurdly under the sun. Lucan's eyes immediately widened in surprise, utterly speechless at the strange spectacle before him. Edgar, standing nearby, blinked in disbelief. "What in the—" The salmon wasted no time. It opened its mouth wide, immediately unleashing a torrent of verbal abuse upon Lucan. "Wow, look at you," the salmon exclaimed mockingly, its tone sharp and sarcastic. "Swinging your sword like you're swatting flies. Did your mother never teach you how to handle a blade properly, or were you simply dropped as a baby?" Lucan froze briefly, eyebrows twitching slightly, momentarily stunned by the unexpected insult. He quickly composed himself, forcing his expression into neutrality as he returned his attention to Orion. "Interesting familiar, young master," Lucan said dryly, resuming his stance. "But you'll need more than mere words to distract me." Orion merely chuckled lightly, re-engaging Lucan in combat. Meanwhile, the salmon continued floating effortlessly above Orion's shoulder, unfazed by the intensity of their fight. With every clash of blades, the salmon unleashed a fresh barrage of insults. "Your stance is pitiful," it mocked viciously. "A blind goblin with a stick could do better than that." Lucan clenched his jaw tightly, doing his best to ignore the incessant barrage, focusing solely on Orion's attacks. But each insult seemed intentionally tailored to chip away at his composure, distracting him even further. "Oh dear, is that sweat? Are you really struggling against someone dozens of years younger than you? Maybe retirement is overdue, old man," the salmon teased relentlessly, wagging its fins in exaggerated mockery. Lucan's calm demeanor began visibly cracking, irritation flashing clearly in his eyes. Finally losing his patience, he pivoted sharply, breaking away from Orion and swung his sword angrily toward the salmon, shouting, "Enough of your nonsense!" The blade passed harmlessly through the salmon's incorporeal form. Completely unaffected, the salmon gasped dramatically before bursting into mocking laughter. "Did you really think you could hit a majestic dragon with brute force?" "Oh, how adorable," it crowed triumphantly, clearly amused. Lucan stood frozen in shock for a second, frustration evident on his face as Orion burst into genuine laughter, unable to maintain seriousness any longer. "Brother Lucan, getting angry at a salmon won't help you win this match." Lucan groaned audibly, shaking his head with resignation as he smiled bitterly. "Young master. That familiar is infuriating." Orion grinned cheekily, resuming their spar. "That's the point." They exchanged several more blows, Lucan forced to constantly divert his focus between Orion's aggressive strikes and the salmon's relentless verbal harassment. Soon enough, Lucan felt his concentration beginning to falter. Realizing the strain, Orion slowed down his attacks and gradually ended their match, stepping back with a satisfied nod. "All right, that's enough." The salmon, sensing the sparring had ended, yawned exaggeratedly while looking at Lucan as if he was a useless piece of trash, then vanished back into Orion's sea of consciousness. Lucan sheathed his sword, exhaling deeply as he relaxed his posture. He glanced at Orion, smiling ruefully. "I've experienced many tactics, young master, but never once did I think insults from a fish could break my focus." "Thanks for reading, smiley face,